Two confident deputies think they've secured an easy conviction. A tired black mechanic, a planted package, and a courtroom ready to believe them. Their case is airtight, their story rehearsed. But then she walks in. Kelly Simpkins, the quiet public defender with a second-hand suit and a nervous smile, barely looks old enough to be out of law school. They dismiss her instantly. Yet as the trial unfolds, so does a quiet, surgical dismantling of their lies. She asks the kind of questions no one expects from someone who's just here to defend. The judge grows tense, the prosecutor loses his grip, and the deputies? They're about to learn that in this courtroom, they're not the ones holding the power. Who is Kelly Simpkins, and what's she really doing here? Deputy Carl Brewer leaned back in the wooden chair outside courtroom 3, arms folded across his chest, like a man without a care in the world. His boots were polished, his badge gleamed, and his mouth held that same smug half-smile it always did before a win. He glanced sideways at his partner, Deputy Nate Young, who was flicking lint off his shoulder with exaggerated precision. "You ready for this?" Brewer asked, his voice low and cocky. Young nodded, but his jaw was tight. "Been ready since the arrest." Brewer chuckled, slow and gravelly. "Then sit back and enjoy. This one's a gimme." The door creaked open, and the bailiff poked his head out. "You're up," he said, nodding toward them. Both men rose, fixing their uniforms with practiced hands. Brewer gave a small wink to the secretary at the clerk's desk, who didn't look up. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with the scent of old paper and disinfectant. Wooden benches lined the room, half filled with the usual faces. A few locals watching for drama, a reporter from the town paper, and an old man who never missed a case. At the defense table, Troy Bennett sat like a statue. His hands were folded in his lap, wrists still bearing the faint red marks from the cuffs. His mechanic's jumpsuit was zipped halfway, stained at the collar. His shoulders hunched slightly, like a man waiting for the inevitable blow. He didn't look at the two deputies. He hadn't looked at anyone, really, not since they'd dragged him out of his own garage 3 weeks ago. Then she walked in. Kelly Simpkins moved with an awkward urgency, clutching her briefcase against her side like it might slip through her fingers. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her navy blue suit looked like it had been pulled from a rack at a chain outlet store. She slid into her seat beside Troy, nodding once at him without making eye contact. Her legal pad flopped open on the table as she sat, pen already in hand. Brewer tilted his head, watching her with open amusement. "That's the defender?" he muttered under his breath to Young. "She looks like a temp." Young didn't laugh, but the corners of his mouth twitched. Across the room, the prosecutor, William Chase, was already standing. Immaculate in a charcoal gray suit and red silk tie, he held his chin high like a man born for the spotlight. He adjusted his cufflinks as he spoke to the judge. "Your Honor, the state is prepared to proceed with the case of State versus Troy Bennett." Judge Ronald Pierce, a man with one eye on the clock and the other on retirement, gave a long sigh and gestured for the jury to be brought in. The bailiff moved with slow precision. The jurors entered, filed into their seats, eyes darting across the room, pausing at Troy, lingering on Brewer and Young. None looked twice at Kelly. Once the formalities were done, Chase rose to deliver his opening statement. He spoke smoothly, confidently, his cadence honed by years of easy wins and minimal challenges. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you're going to hear today is a simple story. Officers Brewer and Young responded to a tip about suspicious activity. They discovered Mr. Bennett hiding a package under the seat of his car. That package contained illegal narcotics. When they attempted to question him, he resisted, physically, violently. Kelly didn't object. She didn't move. She just scribbled something quietly on her legal pad. Troy sat still beside her, his fingers twitching faintly in his lap. The prosecutor continued, voice rising slightly for effect. "This isn't complicated. This is a case of good officers doing their job. This is a man caught in the act, trying to lie his way out. When he sat, there was a brief silence. The judge turned to Kelly. "Ms. Simpkins?" She rose, clearing her throat. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, voice soft, almost too soft for the microphone to pick up. "My name is Kelly Simpkins. I'm representing Mr. Bennett." She paused. Not for drama. More like she was gathering her footing. Her eyes didn't scan the room. She looked only at the jury. "You're going to hear a lot of things today. About what my client supposedly did. About what these officers supposedly saw. And I ask you, before you believe any of it, to listen carefully, look closely, and ask yourselves one question. Does it make sense?" She nodded once, then sat down. Chase smirked. The judge called Officer Brewer to the stand. He strutted to the witness box like it was his own front porch, raised his right hand, took the oath, then leaned back with practiced ease. Chase stepped forward, voice smooth as ever. "Officer Brewer, tell us what happened on the night of August 12th. Brewer gave a theatrical sigh, like he was exhausted by the memory. "We got a call. Tip said someone was moving drugs out of Bennett's garage on Oak Street. We rolled up, saw the defendant sitting in his car, acting nervous. Deputy Young noticed him stashing something under the seat. When we approached, he got aggressive." "Define aggressive," Chase prompted. "Shoved Deputy Young, got out of the car yelling, tried to stop us from retrieving the package." "And what was inside that package?" "Cocaine, bagged, ready to sell." Chase turned to the jury. "No further questions." Kelly stood slowly. She approached the stand with measured steps, stopping just far enough away not to invade space. "Officer Brewer," she said gently, "how long between receiving the tip and arriving at the scene?" 10 minutes, give or take." "Was the tip anonymous?" "Yeah." "No name? No callback? No statement?" "No statement." "Right." Kelly nodded, jotting something on her notepad. "Did you find fingerprints on the package?" Brewer blinked. "Didn't need to. We saw him hide it." "But you did not collect fingerprints." "It wasn't necessary." Kelly tilted her head slightly. "Is it standard procedure in your department to skip fingerprinting narcotics evidence?" Chase stood. "Objection." "Argumentative." "Held drawn," Kelly replied calmly, not even looking his way. She continued. "Did Mr. Bennett have any prior convictions?" "No." "Any history of drug use?" Brewer hesitated. "Not that I know of." "Did he run?" "No." "Did he have a weapon?" "No." Kelly smiled faintly, then turned back toward the defense table. "No further questions?" She sat, scribbling again. The judge called for a short recess. Brewer climbed down from the stand and walked past Kelly's table on the way back to his seat. She didn't look up, but Troy did. Just for a second. Brewer smirked at him. Outside in the hallway, Chase cornered the deputies near the water fountain. "She's quiet," he said, tugging at his tie. "But don't underestimate her." Young crossed his arms. "She's green. Probably one of those public defender volunteers trying to build a name." Chase looked through the small window in the courtroom door. Kelly was still sitting at the table, head bent, writing. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe she knows something we don't." Back inside, the jurors whispered among themselves. The judge checked his watch. "And Kelly?" She finally stopped writing, folded the paper, tucked it inside her briefcase. Then she looked up, her eyes sharp, focused, and far colder than anyone in that courtroom had noticed before. Carl Brewer liked the way the courtroom lights reflected off his badge. It was a small thing, but it made a statement. To the jurors, to the defendant, to everyone watching. His uniform was pressed, his testimony polished, and his voice carried the smooth authority of a man who'd been believed his entire career. Sitting up straight in the witness chair, he looked down at Kelly Simpkins with mild amusement. She had no notes in her hand, this time, just her pen, tapping quietly against the table. Chase approached again, flipping open his folder as if they hadn't already choreographed this. "Officer Brewer, let's walk through your account once more, clearly this time. For the record, when you arrived at the scene, what did you observe?" Brewer cleared his throat, projecting to the back of the room. "We pulled up to Bennett's garage at approximately 8:47 p.m. The garage was closed, lights off, but the defendant was sitting in his car, alone. When we stepped out, I saw him lean forward. Looked like he was shoving something under the driver's seat. And what did you do then?" I approached from the left side, Deputy Young from the right. I asked him to step out. He ignored us at first. Then he got loud, real defensive. That's when I signaled Nate to reach for the package while I kept the subject's attention. Kelly watched Brewer speak, her face unreadable. She didn't blink, didn't move, just sat still, like a statue waiting for a shift in the wind. Chase flipped a page. The package in question, how large would you say it was? Roughly the size of a paperback book, plastic-wrapped. And when tested, it contained what substance? Cocaine. Over 60 grams. Chase gave a satisfied nod and turned to the jury. No further questions. There was a pause. The courtroom seemed to breathe in unison. Then Kelly stood. She walked slowly toward the witness stand, stopping just outside the boundary line. Her hands were still empty. Her expression was still mild. But her eyes were locked onto Brewer's face like a surgeon about to make a cut. "Officer Brewer," she began, "just a few clarifying points." Brewer gave a theatrical nod. "Sure. You say you arrived at 8:47 p.m. How precise is that?" "Give or take a minute. Our cruiser logs the time." Kelly tilted her head. "Was it still light out?" He hesitated. "It was dusky. Sun had mostly set. And yet you were able to clearly see the defendant push something under the seat from your position outside the vehicle?" Brewer grinned slightly. "We had our headlights on. It was plenty bright." "No interior light in the car?" "Not that I recall." Kelly took a small step forward. "So the car's inside was dark, but from outside, without interior light, you saw a specific package being shoved under the seat?" Brewer frowned slightly. "I saw the motion, and later we recovered it." "I see. Let's talk about the tip," she said, pivoting. "Anonymous, correct?" "Correct. No recorded voice call, no transcript, no saved number." "No." Kelly folded her arms. "Did you file a report including the tip?" "We referenced it in the arrest report." "Did the tip include Mr. Bennett's name?" "No. Just the location and activity." "So you arrived without knowing who was there and immediately assumed Mr. Bennett was the individual referenced?" "We saw him alone, acting suspicious." Kelly nodded again, gently. "Have you responded to false tips before?" "Sure." "And what's the process in those cases?" "We check things out. If nothing's there, we move on." "May not move on this time?" Brewer leaned forward slightly, voice hardening. "Because something was there." Kelly paused. "You're certain of that?" "I testified to it." There was a silence in the room that hummed. Chase shifted in his seat. Then Kelly turned away from the stand and walked back to her table. She picked up a single sheet of paper and walked back, holding it between two fingers. "Officer Brewer, do you recognize this document?" He squinted. "Looks like a cruiser dispatch log." "Correct. Your cruiser's log from August 12th. Do you see the arrival time?" He frowned. "Says 8:56 p.m. Kelly looked up slowly. "You said 8:47 earlier. You may have been off. It's a 9-minute difference." He shrugged. "We're not always looking at the clock." Kelly stepped back again. "And the log shows no mention of a civilian complaint until 9:04 p.m., after the package was already in your custody. Is that typical?" Chase was on his feet. "Objection, irrelevant to the arrest itself." "Establishing timeline, Your Honor," Kelly said without turning her head. Judge Pierce rubbed his temples. Overruled. But tread carefully, Ms. Simpkins. She nodded once. No further questions for now. As she walked back to her table, Chase rose quickly. We'd like to call Deputy Nate Young to the stand. Nate moved slower than Brewer, but with similar confidence. He raised his hand, swore in, and adjusted the mic before speaking. Deputy Young, were you present during the events of August 12th? Yes. Did you witness Mr. Bennett's actions firsthand? I did. And what did you observe? Young leaned in, glancing once at the jury. When we approached, he was visibly agitated. He raised his voice, cursed at us. I saw him push something under the seat. Officer Brewer distracted him while I retrieved it. That's when he shoved me. Kelly made a note, her hand calm. Her eyes never left him. And you confirmed the contents of the package? I did. Chase smiled. Thank you, Deputy. Kelly stood again. She approached slowly. Deputy Young, were you the one who opened the package? No, that was done back at the station. Then how did you confirm the contents? Young hesitated. I misspoke. I meant, I saw the substance later. You said under oath that you confirmed the contents at the scene. It was a figure of speech. Kelly's eyebrows lifted. Are you often imprecise in your police reports? Chase stood. Objection. Sustained. Kelly moved on. Did Mr. Bennett swing at you? No, he shoved me. Peel's wood hand? Young blinked. His right, I think. Kelly looked down at her pad. Medical report filed at booking shows bruising on his left wrist, not his right. Must have used both, Young replied quickly. Kelly looked back up. And yet, you wrote he used a single open-hand shove, no mention of both hands. Young's throat bobbed. I may have written it in a hurry. Kelly turned slightly toward the jury box. Do you often write arrest reports in a hurry when felony charges are involved? Objection, Chase snapped again. He's drawing, Kelly said softly, already turning back to her seat. The judge called for a recess, banging the gavel once. Brewer leaned over to Young as they walked past the jury box. You fumbled. Young clenched his jaw. She's twisting things. She's not twisting anything, came a voice from behind them. It was Troy. For the first time since the trial started, he'd spoken loud enough to be heard. Brewer paused. What'd you say? Troy looked up, tired eyes sharp for once. She's not twisting anything, you're just not used to someone pulling your story apart. Brewer stepped forward, but Kelly was already between them. Don't, she said quietly to Brewer. This isn't your turf anymore. Brewer opened his mouth, then shut it again. The courtroom emptied slowly, the jury silent, the judge disappearing into chambers. Chase stayed at the front, shuffling papers, pretending not to be rattled. But something had shifted. They all felt it. Even if no one would admit it out loud yet, the lie, once perfect, had begun to fray, and Kelly Simpkins hadn't even gotten started. As soon as the courtroom doors reopened, the tension returned with the same quiet hum. Jurors filed in again, their eyes darting from Troy to the deputies, then settling, just for a moment, on Kelly Simpkins. She was the last to take her seat, pausing to flip through her legal pad with an unhurried calm. The courtroom had shifted, the old certainty flickering at the edges. Even Judge Pierce, always eager to push the docket forward, now watched the defense table with a trace of interest he rarely bothered to hide. The bailiff called everyone to order. William Chase stood first, smoothing down his jacket as he addressed the court. The state calls Patricia Ellison to the stand. A slender woman with wary eyes and a dark green dress walked to the witness box. She was the owner of the neighboring laundromat. Everyone in town knew her. Patricia gave her oath with a trembling hand, then glanced nervously at Troy as she sat. Chase gave her a reassuring smile. Ms. Ellison, you own the property adjacent to Bennett's garage? Caesar. I do, she said, voice barely more than a whisper. Did you witness any unusual activity on the night in question? Patricia hesitated, glancing at Troy, then at the two deputies. I heard some shouting, she said. Saw the patrol car's lights flashing outside. Did you see Mr. Bennett with anyone else? She shook her head. No. He was alone, I think. Chase nodded. Did you see the officers retrieve anything from the vehicle? I saw them lean in the car, she said. I don't know what they got. We'll be old, Miss Ellison, thank you. Chase stepped away, shoulders squared, already preparing to call his next witness. But Kelly rose smoothly, her approach so slow and deliberate that the jury leaned in almost unconsciously. Miss Ellison, Kelly began, I know it's been a stressful day. Just a few questions for you. Patricia nodded, folding her hands together in her lap. When you saw the police car's lights, how long had Mr. Bennett's car been there? Patricia considered. Not long. Maybe 5 minutes. I'd just locked up for the night. Did you see him exit the vehicle at any point before the officers arrived? No. He was sitting there. Did you see the officers search the car? I saw them open the door and look inside. That's all. Kelly nodded. Did you see either officer remove something from their own pockets or from anywhere else before searching the car? Patricia's eyes widened slightly. I couldn't see well. The angle. She paused, searching her memory. But I didn't see them carrying anything when they arrived. They just walked up. Thank you, Miss Ellison, Kelly said gently. No further questions. Patricia looked visibly relieved. She stepped down, hurrying to the back row as if eager to become invisible. Chase called his final witness, a lab technician named Stephen Harmon. The questions were routine. Yes, the package tested positive for cocaine. Yes, the evidence had been logged by Deputy Brewer. No irregularities in the chain of custody. Chase moved through the questions briskly, his confidence returning as the technical details stacked up. There was a sense of finality in his voice as he closed his folder. No further witnesses, Your Honor. Judge Pierce nodded, turning his tired gaze to Kelly. Defense? Kelly didn't rush. She stood and straightened her suit jacket, then turned and nodded to Troy. For the first time, she looked him square in the eyes, as if silently promising that this was his moment, too. I called Troy Bennett to the stand. Troy swallowed hard as he rose. The room was quiet, every sound amplified, the shuffle of his feet, the quiet exhale as he took his seat and swore the oath. For a moment he looked out at the jury, his hands resting in his lap, knuckles white. Kelly began. Mr. Bennett, let's go over what happened that night, in your own words. He glanced at her, then down at his hands. I finished work around 8, he said quietly. I sat in my car for a few minutes, checking my phone. I was tired. Next thing I knew, the police pulled up. Their lights flashed right at me. What happened next? They came up on both sides. Officer Brewer knocked on the window. He asked me to step out. I didn't know what was happening, so I asked why. He just told me to get out. When I did, Deputy Young started reaching inside the car. Kelly's voice was gentle. Did you try to hide anything? No, Troy said, voice firmer. I didn't have anything to hide. Did you resist? He shook his head. I tried to pull my arm away when Deputy Young grabbed me. I didn't shove him. I just wanted to know what was happening. Kelly let that hang in the air. Did you ever see the package before that moment? No, Troy said, voice trembling with frustration. Never saw it in my life. She nodded. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. No further questions. Chase stood, arms folded. Mr. Bennett, you say you never saw the package, but you admit you pulled away from the officer? He did. He grabbed my wrist. Isn't that resisting? I just wanted to know why they were searching my car. Were you agitated? Troy stared at the table. Wouldn't you be? Chase smirked, then turned away. No further questions. As Troy stepped down, Kelly stood again. She looked at the judge, then at the jury. "I'd like to recall Deputy Young." Judge Pierce arched an eyebrow, but nodded. Deputy Young took the stand again, his posture now less certain. Kelly approached, her voice low and even. "Deputy Young, earlier you testified that you saw Mr. Bennett shove you with his right hand, but the booking report showed bruises only on his left wrist. Is that correct?" Young hesitated. "I don't remember exactly." "Let's clarify," Kelly said. She held up a photocopy of the medical intake sheet. "This shows clear bruising on the left wrist. No mention of any injuries to the right side. Is that your report?" Young squinted. "Yes. It looks like mine. Can you explain why the report doesn't match your testimony?" He looked at Chase, who gave a subtle shake of the head. "It was hectic. Maybe I made a mistake." Kelly stepped back, folding her arms. "Deputy Young, are you certain you saw Mr. Bennett hide a package? Are you certain you didn't see Officer Brewer put anything in the car?" Young's jaw clenched. "I know what I saw." "But you've already admitted you weren't the one to retrieve or open the package, and you've acknowledged errors in your report. Is it possible you were mistaken?" He glared at her. "No, I'm not mistaken." Kelly nodded, her tone gentle. "No further questions." The judge leaned forward. "Is the defense ready to call its next witness?" Kelly turned. "I am, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Linda Yates." A middle-aged woman with a shock of gray hair entered the courtroom and took the stand. Kelly introduced her as a forensic analyst unaffiliated with the local police department. "Dr. Yates, you reviewed the evidence package in this case. Did you find any fingerprints on the plastic wrap?" Dr. Yates shook her head. "No, I did not." Kelly nodded. "Would you expect to find prints, given the officer's statements?" "If the defendant handled the package as described, I would expect latent prints, especially on the outer layer, but there were none." "No further questions?" Chase stood. "Is it possible the prints were wiped off?" "It's possible," Dr. Yates admitted, "but that would suggest deliberate tampering." Chase frowned, thanked the witness, and sat down. As Dr. Yates stepped away, Kelly returned to the table and flipped to a fresh page in her notebook. The courtroom was quiet now, each question and answer sinking into the bones of everyone present. For the first time, some of the jurors began to look at Brewer and Young with something like suspicion. Even Judge Pierce drummed his fingers on the bench, eyes narrowed in thought. The cross-examination had left no dramatic outbursts, no shouting matches. Instead, there was a slow, careful unraveling, a sense that beneath the uniforms and the confident stories, something rotten had been exposed. Kelly gathered her papers, tucked them into her case, and nodded quietly to Troy, who looked back at her with the first glimmer of hope he'd shown since his arrest. As the judge called for lunch recess, the deputies left the courtroom side by side, their faces stony and silent. Chase lingered behind, staring at Kelly as if seeing her for the first time. And Kelly Simpkins, the quiet woman with the unremarkable suit and the steady eyes, stood alone at the defense table. She closed her legal pad, but not before writing 2 words in neat, careful script. "Almost there." The energy in the courthouse after lunch was nothing like it had been in the morning. Every shuffle of paper, every nervous cough seemed a little louder. For the first time, the locals in the back rows leaned forward in their seats, as if they sensed something important was about to happen. Troy sat straighter at the defense table, not quite confident, but no longer slumped. Even Judge Pierce appeared more alert, tapping his pen lightly on his notes while he waited for the attorneys to resume. Kelly Simpkins stood as soon as the judge nodded her way. There was no wavering in her step now. She carried a sealed manila envelope, which she placed carefully on the edge of the defense table before looking up at the judge. "Your Honor, the defense calls its next witness, Officer Denise Walker." A murmur ran through the benches. Officer Walker was known in town. She worked patrol, kept mostly to herself, and, unlike the others, had a reputation for doing things by the book. As she walked to the stand, Brewer and Young traded a look, their expressions suddenly uneasy. Walker took her oath, sitting upright and scanning the courtroom with the calm composure of someone with nothing to hide. "Officer Walker," Kelly began, "you were on duty the night Mr. Bennett was arrested, correct?" Walker nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I was on patrol on the west side of town." "Did you respond to a dispatch call at or near Bennett's garage?" "We did. I arrived after the arrest had already been made." Kelly flipped open her legal pad. "When you arrived, what did you observe?" Walker's eyes moved to Brewer and Young, lingering there a moment. "I saw Deputies Brewer and Young searching Mr. Bennett's car. Mr. Bennett was handcuffed, sitting on the curb. The garage was dark and locked. I saw Deputy Brewer place a clear plastic bag into an evidence pouch." "Did you see who removed the bag from the car?" Walker hesitated. "No. When I arrived, the car door was already open, and the bag was in Deputy Brewer's hand." "Thank you, Officer Walker. Did you file a supplemental report?" "I did." Kelly picked up the sealed envelope. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Officer Walker's supplemental report as Defense Exhibit C." Chase stood abruptly. "Objection! The prosecution was not provided with this document prior to today." Kelly met his eyes. "It's a matter of public record, Your Honor. Filed the morning after Mr. Bennett's arrest." Judge Pierce leafed through the report. After a long pause, he nodded. "Admitted." Kelly continued. "Officer Walker, in your report you note that Mr. Bennett's car was locked when you arrived. How did Deputies Brewer and Young access it?" Walker spoke carefully. "I did not see them unlock it. The driver's door was open when I walked up." Kelly nodded, satisfied. "Thank you, Officer Walker. No further questions." Chase tried to recover with a handful of questions about procedure, but Walker's answers remained even and precise, never giving him anything useful. When she left the stand, she cast a quick, unreadable glance toward Kelly. Kelly stood and looked around the courtroom. "Your Honor, the defense calls its next witness, Miss Carla Mason." Carla, a young woman with a backpack slung over her shoulder, made her way forward. She lived across the street from Bennett's garage and had been walking home the night of the arrest. Kelly waited until Carla had settled in. "Miss Mason, did you see anything unusual on Oak Street the night Mr. Bennett was arrested?" Carla nodded. "Yeah. I saw the police cars, and I saw 2 officers standing by Mr. Bennett's car." "Did you see what the officers were doing?" "They were talking. Then one of them reached into his jacket and pulled out a bag. I thought maybe it was his lunch or something, but then he handed it to the other officer, who went over to Mr. Bennett's car." Chase stood quickly. "Objection, speculation. She can't possibly know what was in the bag." Kelly's tone stayed gentle. "I'm simply asking for her observations, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Overruled. Continue, Miss Simpkins." Kelly smiled at Carla. "Did you see that bag again?" Carla frowned in concentration. "I think so. When I walked past a few minutes later, I saw one officer putting a bag just like it into an evidence pouch." Kelly let the words settle. She thanked Carla, who left the stand with relief etched across her face. Chase took a long pause, gathering his thoughts. For the first time all trial, his confidence faltered as he approached the jury. "The state has no further witnesses, Your Honor." Judge Pierce turned to Kelly. "Defense." Kelly nodded. "Your Honor, I'd like to recall Officer Brewer to the stand." Brewer stood, jaw tight, and walked forward with the faint swagger he always carried, though it now seemed a bit forced. "Officer Brewer," Kelly began, "did you or Deputy Young bring any evidence with you to the scene that night?" Brewer's voice was clipped. "No. We only recovered what we found in the car." "Are you sure? Because we have testimony from a witness who saw you retrieve a bag from your own jacket." He glared at Carla, then at Kelly. "That's not true." Kelly didn't flinch. "Your cruiser's dash cam, did it record the stop?" Brewer hesitated, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "The camera malfunctioned. Nothing was recorded." Kelly took a slow breath. Isn't it department policy to check the dash cam before and after every shift? Did you file a malfunction report? He hesitated. I forgot. Kelly nodded, as if this was expected. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, the defense would like to call an expert witness, Mr. Samuel Fields, dash cam technician for the county. Fields, a man in his late 40s with a gentle demeanor, took the stand. Kelly handed him a copy of the department's maintenance log. Mr. Fields, did you inspect the cruiser's dash cam after the night in question? Yes. The system was in perfect working order the next day. No signs of malfunction. Kelly turned to Brewer. Officer Brewer, can you explain the discrepancy? He shifted in his seat, mouth opening and closing. Maybe it glitched during our shift. Kelly nodded. Or maybe it didn't glitch at all. She turned away from Brewer, letting his silence fill the room. The judge folded his hands, brow furrowed. Simpkins, do you have any more witnesses? Kelly shook her head. No, Your Honor. The defense rests. For a long moment, no one moved. The weight of the afternoon pressed down on everyone. The prosecution had nothing left. The deputies sat in silence, Chase with a stack of notes in front of him, but no words. The jury looked from one side to the other, uncertainty in every glance. Judge Pierce leaned back, steepling his fingers. We will reconvene for closing arguments in the morning. As the gavel fell, Brewer shot Kelly a look of pure venom. Young slumped beside him, staring at the floor. Outside the courtroom, townspeople whispered among themselves. For years, the deputies had never been questioned, never doubted. But now, the cracks were showing. The perfect lie had begun to crumble. Kelly packed her bag slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. Troy rose beside her, gratitude and disbelief mingling on his face. For the first time, he whispered, "Thank you." She met his gaze, her voice steady and low. "We're not finished yet." As they left the courtroom, the sun slanted low across the courthouse steps, casting long shadows behind them. The old order was faltering. Something new, something true, was struggling to break through the cracks, and Kelly Simpkins, with her steady steps and patient resolve, was leading the way. Morning arrived, and with it the low, persistent buzz of anticipation in the courthouse halls. The trial had become the talk of the town. People gathered outside, some crowding the wooden benches, some peeking through the tall windows, everyone wondering if today would bring an end to the story, or if it would just slip quietly back into the silence the deputies always seemed to command. The courtroom itself felt different, brighter, sharper, as if the truth had finally found a way to crawl in through the cracks Kelly Simpkins had carved. Inside, Kelly was already seated, her hands folded on the table. She wore the same navy suit, her hair pulled back neat as ever, but there was something else to her now, a steadiness that radiated out and pressed into every corner of the room. Troy Bennett arrived beside her, nodding to the bailiff, and then quietly sliding into his seat, his hands fidgeting, the faintest line of a smile threatening his lips. Deputies Brewer and Young sat at the prosecution's table, Brewer's face stone-like, Young's gaze averted. Prosecutor William Chase shuffled his closing notes, a little too quickly, his usual calm replaced by a thin mask of forced composure. Judge Pierce sat tall, looking out over the courtroom with an intensity nobody had seen from him all week. The judge rapped the gavel, signaling for silence, and Chase rose. He cleared his throat, glancing at the jury, gathering the pieces of his argument like a man picking through ashes for unburned kindling. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "this case is about law and order, about police officers doing what they are sworn to do, and a defendant caught with drugs in his possession. The defense has tried to paint this case as something it's not, full of distractions and questions that do not change the facts." He gestured to Brewer and Young. "These men have put their lives on the line for this town. They did their duty. Don't let speculation cloud your judgment." He sat down, exhaling in relief, as if the end of his speech had been a finish line. The judge turned to Kelly. "Miss Simpkins, your closing statement?" She stood, steady and calm, and faced the jury. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't pace or gesture wildly. She just spoke, and her words rang out clear as morning. This trial is not just about law and order. It is about truth and the power people hold when nobody's watching. The prosecution has asked you to trust two men simply because of the uniforms they wear. But uniforms do not make someone honest. Actions do. She paused, letting the words linger. You've seen inconsistencies, gaps in stories, a package of drugs with no fingerprints, a dash cam that worked before and after, but conveniently not during the critical moment, a report filed late, a witness who saw a bag pulled from a jacket, not a car. She looked at each juror, one by one. Ask yourself, does this make sense? Does this feel like justice? Kelly's gaze fell on Troy, who met her eyes, and she smiled just for him. Mr. Bennett is not on trial alone. This whole town is. We are on trial for what kind of justice we allow in our name. She thanked the jury, then sat, not a tremor in her hands. The judge instructed the jury and sent them out to deliberate. The room emptied of sound except for the scratch of the bailiff's pen and the distant drone of summer cicadas outside. It didn't take long. After just over an hour, the jury filed back in, their faces tight with focus. Everyone rose as they entered. Judge Pierce leaned forward, his knuckles white on the bench. "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreman, a woman with silver hair and resolute eyes, stood. "We have, Your Honor." "In the matter of State versus Troy Bennett, how do you find the defendant?" She didn't hesitate. "Not guilty." The words echoed. For a second, time stretched. Troy closed his eyes, letting out a breath that seemed to come from years back, not just weeks. Kelly put a gentle hand on his shoulder, steadying him. But the moment wasn't over. Judge Pierce raised his hand for silence as murmurs swept through the gallery. He addressed the prosecutor and the deputies. "Before I dismiss this case, I have questions for the arresting officers. There are discrepancies in your testimony and evidence handling that cannot be ignored. I am referring this matter for review by the county's Internal Affairs Unit. Officers, you are suspended pending investigation." Brewer's face flushed, jaw clenched. Young sank lower in his seat. Chase looked down at his papers, lips pressed thin and tight. The courtroom erupted, some in relief, some in disbelief. But at the center of it, Kelly Simpkins remained composed. As Troy turned to thank her, she looked him in the eye. "You didn't deserve what happened to you," she said, her voice low and steady. "You deserve to walk free and to be believed." He struggled for words. "How did you do it?" he asked. Kelly's eyes flickered, almost amused. "I didn't do anything except make people see what was in front of them. The rest, they had to choose." He nodded, the gratitude in his expression raw and unsheltered. Kelly turned to gather her things as the judge cleared his throat. "Pull more matter," the judge said, his gaze on Kelly now. "Miss Simpkins, the court thanks you for your diligence. If more attorneys approached their work with your integrity, our system would look very different." She inclined her head. "Thank you, Your Honor." But even as the judge praised her, whispers flared along the edges of the gallery. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark suit had entered the room. He didn't wear a badge, but his bearing was unmistakable. A man used to giving orders. He stepped quietly up to the defense table as Kelly finished packing up her case. "Agent Simpkins," he said in a low voice, "will debrief at the field office at noon." Brewer overheard. His face, once red with anger, went pale. Young stared in disbelief. Even Judge Pierce looked startled. The truth rippled across the room. The public defender wasn't just another lawyer scraping for clients. She was a high-ranking federal agent, someone with the power to investigate the department, to hold the entire system accountable. The weight of that knowledge landed with a thud. Kelly didn't so much as blink. She gave the agent a brief nod. "I'll be there," she replied, calm as ever. Troy looked from Kelly to the agent and back again. "You're—" She smiled softly, cutting him off. "There's always more to the story, Troy. But today, this one is yours." They walked out of the courtroom together, past townspeople who parted like water, past the deputies who could no longer look her in the eye, past Chase and his red file folders, past Judge Pierce, who watched her with a respect reserved for people who change the way things are done. Out onto the courthouse steps, where the morning had become a new afternoon, and the world, if only for a moment, felt wider. As she left, a reporter rushed forward, notebook in hand. "Miss Simpkins, what happens next? What will you do now?" Kelly paused on the steps, sunlight painting her face with gold. "We keep going," she said. "We keep asking questions until the answers are too loud to ignore." And with that, she melted into the crowd, leaving behind the echo of her footsteps and the silent, hopeful gaze of everyone she'd just taught to see the cracks and to demand the light that shines through. Word spread through the town before the courthouse doors had even closed. People whispered in shop lines and over chipped coffee mugs in the diner, passing along the news with wide eyes and quiet wonder. Troy Bennett had walked free. The deputies everyone thought were untouchable had been suspended, and Kelly Simpkins, the nervous young public defender nobody had heard of before this week, had left the courtroom, not as a local, not as a visitor, but as something else entirely. A force, a presence, a symbol. Outside, the summer light was gentle and gold, and the courthouse steps felt different beneath Kelly's shoes. Troy stood with her, unsure what to do with his hands, his keys, his freedom. He kept glancing at the sky, blinking, as if to reassure himself that all of this, the verdict, the suspension, the truth, wasn't some elaborate dream. They paused at the edge of the crowd, people parting in front of them. A woman from Troy's neighborhood reached out to shake his hand. "We knew you didn't do it, Troy," she said, tears in her eyes. "But it means something, having it said out loud. Means something to all of us." Troy squeezed her hand, words slow and careful. "Maybe things'll be different now." From behind them, the courthouse doors swung open again. Deputy Young emerged first, face pale, lips pressed thin. He avoided everyone's gaze and hurried off, head down. Brewer followed, jaw set, his steps heavy. There was no applause, no jeering, just the quiet power of a community watching the law reckon with itself. Kelly turned, watching the deputies disappear. For a moment, she saw in their posture not just anger, but fear. The fear of having to answer, the fear of losing the story they'd controlled for years. She let herself feel a shred of sympathy, but only for a heartbeat. Justice was not about revenge. It was about truth and change. She started walking down the sidewalk, Troy beside her. He kept sneaking glances at her, the question finally tumbling out as they passed the bakery with its open windows. "You really a federal agent, or was that just for show?" She smiled, the edges of her mouth curling upward. "I am." This town had a pattern, and it took more than just one man being accused for us to get involved. But today the story's about you, about what you survived. He digested this, his hands flexing at his sides. "So what happens to them now?" "The investigation will be thorough. They'll answer for every report, every stop, every case. But it's not just about them. There are people who need to know that the truth matters. That's why you had a trial. That's why you told your story." Troy's face was thoughtful, lined with memory and something new, maybe hope. "I never thought I'd see the day." "You did more than see it," Kelly replied. "You made it happen." A small crowd had gathered in front of the courthouse. Some came to thank her, to ask questions, to offer nervous smiles. Children stood on tiptoe to see the woman who'd stared down the law and won. One boy stepped forward, voice clear and eager. "Are you staying, Miss Simpkins? We could use someone like you." She crouched to his level, her face gentle. "The best thing I can do is help you believe in yourselves. Don't let anybody tell you what justice looks like. Make sure you see it for yourself." The boy nodded, thoughtful, and retreated back to his mother's side. Kelly rose, her gaze meeting Troy's. "You have a life to rebuild." He nodded, determination finally beating out disbelief. "I want to go back to the garage. I want to work. I want to take care of my nephew like I said I would." "You will," she said, one step at a time. From across the street, a cluster of reporters had set up their cameras, waiting for a final statement. Kelly didn't move toward them. She let the crowd answer for her. Neighbors hugging, Troy shaking hands, people speaking quietly, promising to remember what they'd seen. Judge Pierce exited last, standing on the top step in the afternoon sun, looking over the town with a new expression. Humility. He caught Kelly's eye and nodded. A real nod, not one of dismissal, but of respect. She nodded back. Later, as the courthouse quieted and people drifted home, Kelly found herself walking the streets alone for the first time all week. It felt peaceful, not because everything was fixed, far from it, but because a beginning had been made. She listened to the town settle, the clink of glasses at the diner, a woman's laughter, the whir of a bike on pavement. Normal life, beautiful in its persistence. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from the federal field office. "You did well. We'll need your full report, but take your time. We'll be in touch about next steps." She typed back, "I will. The town will need follow-up resources. There's more here, more stories that need hearing." She swallowed that. A pause, and then another message. "We'll send support. Rest easy, agent." Kelly smiled and slipped the phone away. Rest wasn't easy. Not yet. But maybe, for the first time in a long while, it was possible. As she walked, she noticed people watching from porches, some waving, some silent, some nodding in understanding. A little girl traced her finger on the fogged window of her mother's car, drawing a heart and then a star. Kelly paused in the middle of the square, the courthouse behind her, the world ahead. She breathed in slow, savoring the taste of a town beginning again. At dusk, Troy knocked gently on the door of the small house where his nephew lived. The boy barreled into his arms, giggling. Troy's sister smiled at him, eyes shining. "I knew you'd come back," she whispered, and Troy believed her. Across town, Brewer sat in his living room, staring at his badge on the table. Young sat alone on his porch, the blue lights of the police car parked and cold. And in every corner of the county, people who had lost faith in fairness felt something strange in their chests. A small, stubborn hope. Kelly Simpkins returned to her borrowed apartment, dropped her bag, and let herself breathe. She looked at the photograph of her family tucked in her wallet, the words she'd scribbled months ago, "Be the voice." She whispered them again, quietly, as the sun disappeared and the streetlights glimmered. A knock sounded at her door. A neighbor, dropping off a homemade pie as thanks, a shy smile on her face. "You made us proud," she said, placing the pie in Kelly's hands. Kelly's smile was gentle, tired, and real. "We made each other proud," she replied, meaning every word. Night settled over the town, and for the first time in years it felt as if the world had shifted a little, the old wounds beginning to heal. Justice had not been a thunderclap or a single triumphant moment. It was in every conversation, every returned handshake, every brave word spoken in the light. It was in the simple act of being seen and heard. And as Kelly closed her door and sat at her kitchen table, the scent of apples and cinnamon filling the room, she allowed herself a rare thing, hope that the truth, once found, could stay and grow roots. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the courthouse lawn, golden and warm. Children played tag, their laughter echoing off the marble steps. Troy opened his garage doors, rolling up his sleeves, surrounded by friends eager to help him rebuild. The deputies' empty desks at the station served as silent reminders of the day everything changed. And somewhere, tucked into the quiet, Kelly Simpkins watched it all, knowing this wasn't the end of the story. Not for her, not for Troy, not for the town. Justice was never finished. It was lived, day by day, in every choice to see, to speak, and to believe. She smiled, breathing in the promise of a new day, ready for whatever came next.